this week I saw an article online. It was talking about how Marvel Studios is now taking pitches from writers to work on the new X-Men movie that they're developing. It's really early stages, and it looks like since the writer strike ended, now they're like, hey guys, since you can work again, come on down and give us a pitch. What do you guys want to do for X-Men?
Come on in, everybody.
So I wanted to ask you, what would you do if you were in a position as a writer and you wanted to pitch your take on the X-Men to Marvel? We've already had like literally a dozen X-Men films come out before. So you have to kind of like wonder, like, can they do something new with the X-Men property at this point? Especially in the MCU, where like some of the advantages of the X-Men in their own universe was that they were like the standouts, like they were the non-humans. Like X-Men has always been like a metaphor on racism and still racial stereotyping. Whereas in the world of the MCU, you've got heroes of all kinds that are not like, they don't look like humans. They maybe aren't even humans at all. And, you know, they've got a sense of acceptance, and like, you know, people are going around getting autographs from the Hulk. They're going to conventions and stuff like in Miss Marvel. So do you think that metaphor of the X-Men can really land? And I mean, how would you do X-Men today in the MCU?
I was a big fan of the old school X-Men. I loved Halle Bailey. Halle Bailey, not Halle Bailey, Halle Berry. I loved Halle Berry. I mean, like all of the OGs. I loved X-Men growing up. The newer X-Men movies have kind of been like the origin story movies have kind of been like, okay, whatever. Okay, Sophie Turner, whatever you want. And like I don't have an answer for you, Dan. I don't know if I would do it. I think I would leave them be for a little bit. I feel like they've milked the X-Men for like quite a lot, and continuing to do so just reeks of capitalism. So
it's difficult to, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how they implement the idea of the X-Men and like the MCU, particularly if they don't reboot the MCU, right? Because we are speculating that Avengers Secret Wars is going to be sort of like a soft reboot, if anything, where a bunch of characters are going to bite the dust and a bunch of characters are going to get recast. They might retcon some things, and then here come the X-Men. I mean, X-Men have been in the Marvel Studios stable of characters since 2019 when Disney bought Fox, and people have been clamoring for mutants in the MCU. You know, in Miss Marvel, they sort of said, hey, Miss Marvel is a mutant, and so now that's a thing, and I'm sure they're going to expand upon that in the Marvels movie that's coming out later this year. But they're not in a rush to fill this job. It looks like, you know, they might make a decision by the early months of 2024. What does concern me a little bit, though, is that they're looking to take pitches now. I wonder, like, what they have been doing this entire time. Like, usually Marvel and Kevin Feige and his inner trust have this vision like years in advance about what they want to do with a movie like an X-Men movie, which, you know, like Fantastic Four, these are big characters, some of the most popular in Marvel's history.
Just mean that they want to leave space for a new voice, a new breath of fresh air. We're speaking English.
Breath of fresh air, yes.
Yes, they're really looking for new life. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily mean, and I've known writers that have worked on Marvel projects before. They will hop around from writer to writer until they get exactly what they want. And usually, like, it's a multi-writer situation. You have one main writer, and then you have like 18 others. Like
a writer's room, yeah.
And so, I mean, them taking pitches could just mean we don't know where we want this to go. We do need something new. We all loved the old X-Men because they were phenomenal. And it could just be that they're sort of looking around to see what they can do versus not necessarily, you know, it just doesn't mean that they don't have anything going on in the back end. So,
yeah, that's definitely both concerning and reassuring in some ways, because it means that they're making progress. It also probably means that they aren't as far along as you thought they were. I hope that we'll, you know, get some sort of news about where the X-Men movie is going to land. Right now, they still have so much on their calendar, especially with movies being pushed back because of the actors' strike, that whatever X-Men movie comes out, whenever it comes out, it's not coming out for at least the next, 3 or 4 years minimum. So it's still a ways off. But it's like I said, the positive is that they're working on it. we definitely, there's many reasons why, like, we need a new version of X-Men, even the comic version of the X-Men, like, for example, Charles Xavier and Magneto can't be people who were around in the 60s anymore, because that would mean that they were like 90 years old today. So if these X-Men are going to be in the present day MCU, you can't have it that Magneto grew up in a Nazi war camp and was part of the Holocaust, and that's where his family perished, and that's his origin story, because that would just age him out of potentially taking part of the MCU, unless they pull off one of those Captain America things where he got, went in the ice and then came out, and therefore, like, he's not super old.
I doubt it.
And
That would be so
so,
far from any of the storylines
yeah.
I've ever
So
seen.
I just feel like they're gonna
Like,
like have to update it, and I think just as
yeah.
a franchise as a whole has to kind of move forward in
Update
time.
it or pass the
So,
torch.
yeah, yeah, and the Deadpool movie, the Deadpool
Yeah.
3, it's looking like it's bringing back a lot of those old Fox X-Men characters and the actors, and kind of giving them their final send off. And I'm sure some of them might pop up in like Avengers Secret Wars, because they're gonna need all the characters they can get. So we'll get more of a conclusion on that version of X-Men to be so many of us grew up loving, so that now it will hopefully leave room for them to kind of start fresh with something completely different and new, that has the same sort of familiar elements that we have loved about the X-Men from the past, but at the same time is charting new ground for the future, a future that has been needed for this franchise for quite some time.